Some say it's the best app in the world, while others say it's way too expensive for what you get. But is it actually worth it? Or is Readwise just another overhyped subscription service? Well, I'm here to help. It's my goal to bring this all together and make this the only video that you need to watch about Readwise, and more importantly, really decide whether it's worth it for you or not. We're specifically going to break down what is Readwise, how Readwise works, the pros of Readwise, the cons of Readwise, and is it actually worth paying for it? To sweeten the deal, if you end up deciding on Readwise, I actually contacted them for affiliate link that will give you a special deal from them. Just for full disclosure and transparency, they didn't sponsor this video. I literally had to pay for this out of my pocket, but if you do decide to sign up with my link, I do get a small kickback. And since this is an ultimate review, there's timestamps below. So let's just jump into it. So you probably heard your favorite productivity YouTuber like Ali Abdaal talk about Readwise, this amazing book app that helps him suddenly remember everything that he reads. Or maybe you've been binging Tiago Forte's content and you're on the quest to build your second brain and stumble upon this app. So what is Readwise? In short, Readwise is a reading app that puts your ebook, your articles, and content highlights in one place. I like to think of this like a Zapier for your book highlights. On the website, they say it does 3 things. Number 1, import highlights. Sync your highlights from Kindle, Instapaper, Pocket, iBooks, and more. The second thing is review your highlights. Review the best parts easily through a daily email and app. The third thing is remember your highlights, so recall more and grow your knowledge over time. They claim they use techniques like spaced repetition and active recall to actually help us remember the things that we highlight. But okay, highlights are whatever. My Kindle app does that for me. Why do I need an app like this? So after searching the internet, reading other reviews, and really reflecting on my own experience using Readwise, here are 3 problems that I believe that Readwise solves. Problem number 1. You can't remember everything you read. Have you ever had this idea on the tip of your tongue, but can't remember it completely? For me, this happened a lot. I remember the book and the general idea for something, and I would start flipping the pages to find that one sentence, only to find myself saying, screw it, I'll just read it all over again. It's a frustrating and inefficient process. Don't get me wrong, I love reading books, but not when I'm in a pinch. And if you're like me and you've collected tons of books over the last decade, then we naturally forget things. It's gonna happen. For example, I read this book, Models by Mark Manson, when I was 26 and single. Right now, I'm 34 and single. I like your glasses. And I barely remember anything from the book. And while I have this book in my hand, it brings me to the next problem. It's hard keeping notes for physical books. So call me old school, but it's pretty apparent that I love opening a physical book and just reading it. One of my guilty pleasures is going to a specialty bougie coffee shop, sipping on a cold brew, and reading a hardcover book. But the problem is that I can't get myself to write in the books. It feels so wrong. Yes, I've done the whole trick with the sticky tabs and notes, but they always seem to fall out, or they're really bulky. And I've tried to go the route of writing it out physically or typing on a Word document, but I always seem to lose the file. And due to the friction of note taking, I end up just never doing it to begin with. And speaking about losing notes, this brings me to a third problem. Problem 3. Your highlights are spread across multiple apps. Alright, let's say you're not like me. You want to save the trees and just love digital copies. Sometimes I love digital too, but the problem is that there's so many apps. I have my Kindle highlights, my Instapaper highlights, my video highlights, and if you're anything like me, there's nothing more annoying than wasting time trying to figure out which app did I save my highlight in. And this is where Readwise comes into play. So let's talk about how it works. So if you were like me and signed up for Readwise, you're probably looking at the minimal page wondering, what do I exactly do with this app? The easiest explanation I found was from Ali Abdaal's video, the 5 magical apps that changed my life. Just in case you don't want to watch it, there are 3 layers: the consumption layer, the integration layer, and the second brain. The consumption layers are the apps that you use to capture your highlights. So here are the examples I use. For digital books, I use Kindle. For my podcast, I use the app Air. For physical books, I use OCR Scanner with Readwise. With videos, this is very new, but I'm going to sign up for Annotate TV. I'll do a review on it later. And for online clippings like tweets, email, and articles, I just use the Readwise app, or I'll just save it to my Instapaper or Pocket. So once you have a bunch of highlights, this brings us to our next layer, the integration layer. Basically, what Readwise does is put it all in one place. While I wouldn't recommend it, you could technically browse your highlights through a phone, through the app, instead of logging into Kindle or Instapaper or Pocket. It is all in one place. You can have Readwise send you emails to review your highlights and customize the frequency of the highlights from each resource. And once Readwise collects the information, we can move on to the last layer, known as the second brain, termed by Tiago Forte. The easiest way to think about a second brain is think about having your own knowledge base or external note-taking system for your life. Imagine if you could Command or Control F and just search what you wanted. Readwise will literally export the highlights to a database of your choice. For me, I'm a Notion fan, but there's Roam, there's Obsidian, there's Evernote, and other apps. Just FYI, this isn't free. It'll cost you an extra $3 per month, but we'll talk about how to lower this if you're a student or in academia. Honestly, in my opinion, this is the best part about Readwise. Even if you discontinue your Readwise subscription, then you forever have the second brain that you kind of set up. Okay, so now that we have everything set up, is this really going to help you? So let's dive into the pros of Readwise. Pro number 1, you can scan physical books. The OCR scanner is the most goated feature of Readwise. This is probably the number 1 reason why I even kept it all this time. All you need to do is take a picture in the app, and the scanner will just scan everything for you and copy and paste it into your Readwise. Just in case some things are wrong, you can edit it, but beats the old days of having to type everything out. For full transparency, it's not perfect. Sometimes it'll highlight the random spaces or the text from the page behind it because it bleeds. It's kind of annoying at times. Unfortunately, I'm one of those weirdos that uses an iPhone, an Android, and a MacBook Pro. And I don't know if it's just me, but the scanner seems to work better on iPhone than Android. Pro number 2, you can export to your favorite note-taking app. Like I mentioned before, you can easily set up Readwise with the database of your choice, and you don't need to spend hours organizing your pages or finding thumbnails for the correct book. Readwise will do this for you. And something that's really cool that I kind of found out recently is that it has this advanced duplicate detection. So you don't need to spend hours cleaning up your Notion board or knowledge base because it copied over twice. So far, I haven't noticed any glitches with this. Surprisingly, it's been pretty good. Number 3, Readwise has tons of app integrations. So Readwise connects over to 32 plus different apps. And yes, I counted them all. Some of the apps I've never even heard before. And in my opinion, this is the real value of Readwise. Pretty much every app that I use, Readwise connects to. And it connects to things like Instapaper and Pocket. From what I also noticed that more and more integrations are coming out. So not too long ago, Readwise started integrating with my short form highlights, which is really cool because short form is one of my favorite apps. Okay, so now that we covered the pros, what are some of the cons? What are some of the things that aren't so great with Readwise? Con number 1, Readwise is another paid subscription. A lot of people were complaining that Readwise is a lot of money. Fortunately for me, I don't think too much about paying $9 per month because it isn't a major expense for me. But just because I can afford it, it doesn't mean I can't get over the fact that it feels like I'm paying for a really expensive Zapier. But the value I get from optimizing my knowledge often outweighs the cost of 2 cold brews at Starbucks. Con number 2, exporting on Readwise can be kind of glitchy. Okay, I'm not sure if it's 100% Readwise's fault, but there were 2 areas that I found to be extremely clunky. Let's cover the first one. Exporting highlights to Notion. Okay, to be fair, this mode is still in beta, but sometimes the page stops syncing and I have to literally log into my Readwise and export my highlights over again manually. To be honest, I'm not sure if this happens in Evernote, Obsidian, and Roam. And in my opinion, it's not a huge deal, but it does add a bit of friction to the reading process. The second area where I found kind of clunky were the Kindle highlights. It doesn't save the highlights as text, but bookmarks location in the Kindle app. So if you click it, it'll go into that section of the book. But that kind of breaks my Control F method for Notion. Fortunately, there is a solution that Readwise came out with. There's a page called How Do I Import Highlights from Documents That I Sent to My Kindle. Apparently, you can email your highlights to yourself, but I actually gave up trying to figure it out because it was just way too much friction. I'm not sure if I'm just lazy or just tech illiterate. Con number 3, the daily review is spammy. So Readwise has this option where you can email daily highlights to yourself. And this is where better knowledge retention claims come into play. I know this is really subjective, and I noticed myself hitting the emails marked as read every single time it popped in my inbox. So eventually I just turned this feature off. These emails just don't really fit my use case with Readwise. To be fair, maybe if I was still in pharmacy school, had to memorize a bunch of facts, and wanted to take a study as I go approach, I might find this option to be helpful. Alright, so now that we know the pros and cons of Readwise. Is it actually worth paying for Readwise? Okay, so after using Readwise for a few months now, this is who I'd recommend Readwise to be worth it and who should just skip it altogether. Number 1, note takers who love physical books. As I mentioned earlier, the OCR feature, the scanning feature, is the most goated feature of Readwise. Today, I haven't found a better solution that will take excerpts, allow you to take your notes and integrate it into a database with physical books. Number 2, use a lot of apps. If you're like me and use a bunch of apps, this is just helpful to have everything in one place versus logging into different apps, forgetting my password and scrolling to just find that one insight. It's way easier to just hit Control F in my Notion database and just find the piece of information that I was looking for. Number 3, content creators and curators. As a fellow content creator, this is one of my most essential tools. If I ever need some inspiration or want to reference a source, I can find the primary source relatively easily. What I found is that Readwise not only helps me curate better content, but it also helps me credit the original authors, something that is totally lacking on YouTube and the digital space. After taking part-time YouTuber Academy, I know Ali Abdaal often takes quotes or inspiration compiled from his Readwise and puts it in his newsletter. Oftentimes, I'll find myself saving tweets, articles, podcasts, and books for inspiration for future newsletters as well. And the cool thing is people are always creating new apps. Like for example, the other week I found this Annotate TV, which I plan on taking notes on YouTube videos and doing more film study for YouTube. Number 4, Second Brain and Notion nerds. If you're like me and you love having your own database, this is worth it alone. Just having all your data in one place has increased my productivity alone since I don't need to waste time looking for stuff. Plus, in my opinion, the Notion view is way easier to navigate than a native app. And if I ever want to switch to Roam or Obsidian in the future, I can just export my highlights with a single click. Number 5, you're a researcher or student. Back in pharmacy school, I would have times where I would need to cite something or want to pull up a random fact from the year before, but because I didn't have a good note-taking system and I did everything manually with pen and paper, I would just give up. So I can see Readwise being helpful when it comes to citing references for essays, or the daily review when it comes to studying as I go for exams or understanding concepts. Plus, Readwise offers a academic discount to students and members of academia. If you use my link and then email hello@readwise.io, you'll get a discount. Okay, so now that we kind of went over who this might be valuable for, who should completely pass on Readwise? Number 1, you only use 1 to 2 apps. So if you're the type that only uses Kindle for highlights, then probably Readwise isn't really worth it for you because there's nothing really to integrate. Also, if you don't mind using native apps, then it wouldn't make sense to pay for an integration app to begin with. Number 2, you're a subscription minimalist. One of the things I try to be aware of, especially in this day and age, are the number of subscriptions I use. Not gonna lie, the number of subscriptions definitely add up over time. And for me, I personally don't use or care about things like Netflix or Disney Plus, but I'm always willing to invest in my education for a super bougie cup of coffee per month. As Naval Ravikant says, even back when I was broke and had no money, I always spent money on books. I never viewed that as expense. That's an investment for me. But if you're trying to save money or cut down on subscriptions, I'd give Readwise a pass. Number 3, you don't read that much or you're a hobbyist reader. So if you only read once or twice a year and you don't mind rereading books, I would give Readwise a pass. At least for me, it's hard to justify the price if you're the type to read 1 book per year. If you want to invest into Readwise to put some skin in the game and take your reading more seriously, that might be a good idea. But there's also nothing wrong with just reading for fun, especially if you don't need to read for a living or for your career or work. Sometimes I just like to read and just force myself not to take notes. But it's a complete waste of money for someone who doesn't read or take notes at least once per week, in my opinion. Personally for me, after using Readwise, I find myself actually reading more and saving a lot more time just looking up information. The functions that were most valuable for me were the scanner, the OCR scanner, the integration with Instapaper, and the whole building the second brain. Before this, I would try writing things down on sticky notes and writing out notes, only for it to get lost in the abyss. To be honest, the best part is to be able to go into my Notion board, hit Control F to find that one idea that I was looking for. Anyways, if you want to check out Readwise, check out my affiliate link in the description below. And if you like Readwise, chances are you'll probably like short form, which ironically integrates with Readwise as well. But click on the video to find out more about it. Anyways, I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.